Jesse Pomeroy. This presentation is by me, Ava Tadeo, Vanessa Ho, and Isabella Anderson. Jesse Pomeroy had a difficult childhood. He was born in November of 1859 to his parents Thomas J. Pomeroy and Ruth Ann Snowman. He had one sibling, an older brother named Charles, who he did not get along with. Jesse was often bullied at school due to his strange appearance. He was born with a deformity where a thick white film covered one of his pupils. Because Jesse was getting bullied, he started bullying other kids that couldn't defend themselves. He didn't have many friends, and the only person who really defended him was his mother. When Jesse got into trouble, his father would make him strip and beat him, oftentimes with things such as whips and belts. It is also notable to mention that Jesse Pomeroy was a white male born in Massachusetts, and he was only 11 years old when he was thought to have committed his first murder and continued to murder until he was 16. On the left side of the slide, I have his genogram. His father and mother are represented at the top, and as you can see, there is a red dash in between them. That red dash represents their separation that happened later on in Jesse's life. The 3 dotted lines in between Charles and Jesse represent the bad relationship they had. Jesse illustrated many behavioral issues that can be classified as precursors. Starting when he was very young, he would bully younger kids. Then he started reading very gruesome and violent books. He would also continue on to mutilate and kill small animals, including but not limited to his family's pets. When Jesse would do these things, he would not show any type of remorse, which is a very big indicator of violence later on in life. Jesse did not have much of an adulthood outside of prison. He was sentenced to death by hanging right before turning 17 and spent his entire adulthood in prison until he died at the age of 74 of natural causes.
Mental disorders and treatment. Jesse Pomeroy was never officially diagnosed with a mental disorder, nor did he ever receive treatment. I think this also has a lot to do with the time that he was living in. Psychologists did classify a pattern of behaviors that fell under the umbrella of conduct disorders. All the traits that Jesse Pomeroy displayed were traits that are commonly seen in these kinds of behavioral disorders. The nature of his crimes were very torturous and very violent. He had been committing crimes for about 4 years before he was given the death sentence. His crimes were spontaneous. He did it because he felt like it, but he would plan it out. So he would befriend the children and have them meet him somewhere where he would then execute the murder. Jesse Pomeroy had absolutely no shame in admitting to these crimes. When he was asked why he committed such crimes, he would respond nonchalantly saying that he could not help it. Jesse's MO, his MO was befriending young children and having them meet him different places where he would brutally beat them, torture them, and then murder them. His motive was simply for his own pleasure. He did it because he had felt like it.
Jesse Pomeroy's signature included stabbing his victim's genitals. This was a distinct sign of murder by Jesse Pomeroy. Jesse can be categorized as a disorganized killer due to the nature of his random, sporadic, and rather disorganized matters of killings. Although his early years of torture can be considered organized based on his client base of torturing young boys. Before his trial, Jesse was found capable of withstanding trial, but he was denied the right to counsel. Jesse was found guilty of murder in the first degree and sentenced to death by hanging.
So, demographics. He grew up in the 19th century Massachusetts, and between the 1840s to 1880s, that area is transitioning from a seafaring town to industrialization. So as a result, there are a lot of immigrants moving in. Majority of them are moving in from Ireland. So there are a lot of Irish immigrants. So his family structure, he has one older brother who sold newspapers, and his mom owns and run a dressmaking shop. So according to my research, he grew up in a household with a father who was an alcoholic, and was very abusive toward Jesse. One thing to note is that talks about a lot of violence toward Indians. So Jesse's life in prison. Is he still alive? No, he died in September 29, 1932, and he was originally sentenced to death, but later that was changed to life imprisonment and in solitary confinement. He didn't speak about his crime nor being remorseful, according to my research. Even during the time that when he was in prison, he never spoke about his crimes. So did Jesse Pomeroy has a disorder, and what was the course of the disorder and how severe was the disorder? So he showed many characteristics of someone that has antisocial personality disorder. He showed many traits such as violence without remorse and very impulsive, lack of empathy. So I would say his disorder was severe to the point that he started killing at a young age, that he killed more than 10 children before being caught and sent to prison. So why we chose Jesse Pomeroy as our topic? We believe the importance of studying the life of juvenile offenders in order to tackle different social issues such as poverty, racism, inequality, and domestic and child abuse. It is very important to learn about these issues, and then more social policies can be implemented and more crimes can be prevented. So why someone in forensic psychology should care? Because a forensic psychologist not only need the ability to properly investigate and evaluate the crimes in scientific methods, most important, they play a very crucial role when it comes to punishing and preventing crimes. So a child or teen murderer often grow up in a poor or more disadvantaged conditions, and they often experience trauma during childhood. So additionally, they were more likely to have been bullied physically or sexually abused when they were younger. So the forensic psychologist should pay more attention to the patterns of these young serial killers, as not only for research and studies, but to encourage and provide solutions in order to prevent more tragedy, to prevent more crimes from happening. Jesse is not the only child torturer, and there were 23 cases of child brutality by imitators that were linked to him. Jesse and many others are fans of violent Western dime novels. So it is also very important for a forensic psychologist to bring awareness and education to more people in order to prevent more children or teenagers to imitate violent behaviors. So what did we learn about the forensic psychologists who worked in this area? So I read a book by Carrie Danes. She's a forensic psychologist, and she said that it is really hard for forensic psychologists to compartmentalize their feelings and emotions when dealing with serial killers. So they often have their own therapist and their own ways to decompress after dealing with their cases. I also learned that many serial killers are motivated by lust, power, and thrill. And lastly, I learned the importance of forensic psychologists to try to prevent crimes. They often look into poverty, trauma, and inequality issues, as many killers experience that during their childhood.
Thank you for listening to our presentation. As you can see, some of our sources are listed here, but most of them are embedded in the slides like this. But yeah, thanks for listening. Hope you enjoyed.